Hi everyone, this is Rohit from TISPL India. I welcome you to the third session of this InfoSec Global Roundtable. And I have with me Michael from Renaissance Ireland and Resham from Halodata Singapore. I welcome you both to the session. Today's topic is around third-party risk, specifically focused on cybersecurity. And I think to kick off, I'll go to Michael. Michael, how do you see TPRM and what are the driving factors in your market? You know, being more mature than probably our markets here in Asia, right? So how do you see it?
Yeah, thanks very much, Rohit, and great to be on the show again. It's delighted to catch up with you guys again. I guess third party risk is it's interesting, and when you mention markets and the Asian market, European market, and different markets, every market is slightly different, and even within markets, it's slightly different as well. So we're based in Ireland, obviously, so I think our marketplace is probably relatively immature in terms of third-party risk management, in terms of an automated process. We see the requirement for third-party risk management. We see people talking about it. We see people doing elements of it, but I suppose formalizing it and tidying it up and structuring it, I think that's something that we haven't seen a lot of yet, and we're starting to see that. So we're I'm really interested in the conversation and to see how it's evolved globally, and the sort of learnings that we can get from there too, that we can bring into the marketplace here, to be honest with you.
What do you think, Resham? How is Singapore and the markets around Singapore, like Malaysia, Indonesia, and other countries?
Yeah, I mean, for Southeast Asia, every country is very different at the moment. Different stages, different interest in third-party risk. I think a lot of it is regulatory driven. So in Singapore, we have the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So they put out a new cyber guidelines earlier this year. And in those technology guidelines, third-party risk is now mandatory for all organizations that's regulated. So seems to have, it's mandatory on paper, but it actually making it happen looks to be a tougher challenge. But definitely, I think after the Kaseya incident and other incidents that we've seen happening from true third-party vendors, because Singapore has had a few breaches this year. And all on data or solutions by third parties. So it's becoming a talking point, but a slow and steady kind of interest coming there. What about India?
Yeah, so interestingly, third-party risk management or assessment for us was an accidental thing. When we started, like for TISPL, the services, the market is still was in a state where the big enterprise, the big banks, they were doing it one way or the other, or the larger, very, very large enterprise, multinationals. But it was not across the market. Like Michael said, the market was not mature. It is starting to get there now, right? So we are seeing a lot of demand in bits and pieces, like somebody wants to know rank of a vendor from, let's say, a bit site or a scorecard perspective. Somebody wants to assess a vendor, right? So it is still not that mature. A lot of people are still on Excel sheets and, going up and down. But yes, there is a demand. People have realized after breaches that the third-party vendor or supplier or partner could be a risk to your own business as well. So much so bringing a ransomware in, because a lot of outsourcing happens here, or to India, and if the outsourcing provider is not secure, you're going to get hit one way or the other. So what we have also seen is clients are asking for background checks. But at the end of the day, what the market has to understand, everything is a cost. So whether you want to do an assessment or a background check, I was part of an assessment where I was answering a auditor or a compliance person, and she says, why don't you do a background check? I said, who'll pay for it? I'll do a basic one, right? If you want a deeper one, like last 10 years or last 15 years, there's a cost associated. If the customer is ready to pay, I'm ready to do it, right?
We're,
So I
we're
think
not
it's
that
also about cost.
we're not that mercenary in Europe, you know. We wouldn't look for money for everything.
Yeah, but your cyber position changes all the time. So
Yeah.
you know, even if you're doing third-party risk today, what's the story about that same vendor 2 weeks from now? It changes, right? So I think also what we're getting is it worth spending on it, or how effective are the results for me to consider the risk? Because this is unlike, you know, organizational risk or political risk or economic factors, which are long-term views. Cyber risk is ever changing, right? I mean, if someone would have done Kaseya or any of these vendors recently, they would have passed with flying colors, not flagging up anything till these kinds of incidents happen.
Every day is a different day in cyber, but what we are seeing, and it's interesting. I'm intrigued by some of the points that you're both making there. You know, driven from a regulatory point of view, Resham, from Singapore, and driven probably from a corporate point of view, Rohit, in terms of your marketplace. And I guess that's what we're seeing. But it's a bit like I smile to myself. When you talked about, it's mandatory on paper, Resham, because we sort of see, GDPR again was probably like that, all of those sort of things, but these things take a time to adopt and to get more mature. But we definitely see larger organizations looking at third-party risk management and and as you say, Rohit, they have spreadsheets and they have management like that, but we're starting to see the adoption of platforms, people saying, listen, I need to not necessarily automate it, but I need to pull it together. I need to tidy it up. I need to start looking at packages and technologies, etc., to do that, and even broaden the risk management from a cyber perspective right throughout into all of the other compliance drivers, so that you actually end up with all of the aspects. But we're definitely seeing those conversations starting. We're involved in running events shortly about the whole area of supply chain and risk management within the supply chain. And it is also interesting, if you go back a while, it wasn't all about third parties. It was about everybody was looking at themselves, but now everybody relies on everybody. It's a global world.
I think that was the second question from my side, is manual versus platform-based TPRM, right? So, Resham, why don't you take that up from your perspective in your local market? What are you seeing right now?
So 5 years ago, we sold some solutions to a company in Malaysia, and they sent us an Excel sheet to fill in. And my guys were like, sir, it's like 15 pages long. And they didn't know the answer to 15 or 20 of them, or maybe more. And so I said, okay, give it to me, I'll have a look. And I went through them. I'm like, 90% of this is rubbish. It does not apply to us. We are not in this line of service. We are not exposed. We were just providing a simple product, and we still have to fill it in. And after we filled this in, it probably took them a month and a half later or 2 months later to make that purchase, which then, got me thinking, how many companies actually do this? And true enough, this year they rebought something, and they said, oh, you know what? Your form is old. You need to refill that in. Guess what? Down from 15 pages is now down to 8. But still 90% of it is not relevant, right? And that was 5 years ago. That's my personally introduction to how bad the system was. And then talking to so many people now, because it's, we sell third-party risk management solution, and talking to customers about it, it seems that was not the exception. That's the norm.
Exactly.
Right? That's the norm. Yeah. That's an accepted. I spoke to one of the big 4 or big 6, I should say, companies, and they were telling me that, this is how we do IT audits, and we do everything manually and stuff. I'm like, you're doing IT audit and you're still doing things manually, and you are IT people. So, but then again, seeing all the solutions that we see today, right? The scorecard, the bid cards, the penalties, and stuff like that. How can you manually check the real cyber status of a company beyond the questionnaire, right? So I think that is of more accurate. Like I said, I filled whatever I wanted to fill in the questionnaire, but nobody verified it. Nobody verified it with evidence. Nobody verified it. And then now you have more things to check on, things like DMARC protocols, things like whether there's any dark web information, whether TLS is correct and stuff like that. And how are people going to do that manually? I really don't understand.
And probably one of the challenges for a lot of people is they don't have that information. They don't have those answers anyway, easily available. So it's, what we're seeing is third-party risk management is often an administrative task. It's not the technical people involved. The technical people, they haven't time to be going down this route. But I do, we distribute one of the platforms that you mentioned there in Panaraise in Ireland, and we're definitely seeing the appetite of that type of thing there. We're seeing those sort of conversations. We're seeing, but there are platforms there, but it's the breadth of bringing the cyber part in. Yeah, I think you can automate some of the aspects of that. You definitely have to rely on some people saying, well, listen, this is the fact. It's like all of these questionnaires, I would question whether most of the stuff in the spreadsheet ever gets verified anyway. It just gets stuck in there. And if it's a tick in the box exercise, I think it can be a tick in the box exercise for a lot of organizations. It's how you pull those together. It is also interesting when you talk about the big four, big six, whatever the firms are in your region or whatever it is, and paper and addressing it as auditors. I think there's some people making this a more complex, bigger, tortuous exercise because I suppose maybe that's the business they're in. So I think there are tools that definitely we've seen the benefit of taking some of these tools in there. You will get an ROI out of those tools pretty quickly if you're doing a lot of manual processes. And I think you may automate some stuff that's not very accurate, but at least you have stuff there that you can pull reports and you can look at stuff, you can compare pretty well. I think we're definitely seeing the conversations taking place. The purchases will follow. I think, I believe that, TPRM, we will see that as a significant marketplace and requirement in the next couple of years, because the one thing about it is, and I love the word risk, because I smile at the word risk, because the one thing everybody tries to do is take risk out of everything. God's sake, walking down the street these days, you need to take risk out of it. It's dangerous. Life is dangerous. But people want to take risk out. The regulators want to take risk out. The auditors want to take risk out. The investors. So I think it's here to stay for sure.
Yeah, I think what we are seeing is now an uptake in platforms in our market. Traditionally, it has been Excel-based approach, and there are limitations of Excel. You were trying to put something in M1 and you put it in N1 and the whole thing goes for a toss, right? The other thing is the view to the management is clear. They can log in, look at any vendor when they want, or the overall vendor landscape risk, right? So, of course, platforms will help, and it also reduces your manual efforts of coordinating and sending an email and reviewing an email and stuff like that. So I think there is definitely an uptake in platforms. The only thing is cost. Again, right? It's all about money, how much money you want to spend upfront, whether you want to go for a platform license or an assessment-based license or a scoring-based license, right? And that's my next question on this curve, that, most of the customers, are they looking at, single service or single platform, or they're looking at stack of services? Like in TPRM.1, we have a stack, which Resham said, we have dark web, we have phishing simulation, which people don't do on their vendors. We think it's essential to simulate phishing on your vendors too, because, there's always a gap, as you guys mentioned. It's an ongoing process, right? And then do you have scoring, ranking services? Do you have assessment? So for us, it's a stack. So how do you guys, anyone of you can answer, how do you see this thing evolving in your customer landscape?
I would say there's lots of elements, whether they get delivered as a platform or a stack of whatever. I'm not sure I'd get hung up on that. I think but it must be comprehensive. I think that's the important part. It must be all those elements. And it's interesting when you say it from your perspective, Rohit, in terms of TPRM.1 that you're talking about. looking at phishing testing right back into through the supply chain. I guess the challenge that we're probably all going to face to some degree is how intrusive do you get with your supply chain? How close and how tight can you get with it? And I think a lot of certainly people are debating that and working through that to see, well, listen, it depends how important these people are. I think if you look at your tier 1 type suppliers, that maybe you need then to drive that much tighter. You need the rights to go and do phishing testing, et cetera, et cetera. But I think when you go down the supply chain in terms of the importance, I think it just depends. So, but at least I think whether it's a platform, a stack, or whatever it may be, I think there has to be a level of automation. There has to be a level of management. I think the days of the spreadsheet are going to be gone. They have to be gone. It's the only way you can actually manage. Management by spreadsheet is not management. That's my view anyway.
What do you think, Resham, on this, the stack versus, I only want questionnaire-based assessment, or I only want scoring?
I think it's a wide. It really depends on the company, because I was talking to a customer yesterday, and he was telling me that when I was talking to him about this, and he's been using BitSight for some time, and he was saying that now I'm in a new company, so I'm open to choosing other solutions. But I might need, I work with somebody who provides the services to analyze the companies around the world. And my company is doing some M&As soon, and we might need to evaluate those companies as well. And I can't be doing everything in-house. I need to outsource whatever platform I choose, but someone's got to do the work for me. And so that's a customer who wants the full stack. And there's some customers who say, I just need a questionnaire filled. I don't need a risk. So it gives me a question. What is the result? Let me ask you guys. Let me reverse it out back to you, Rohit. What is the outcome? And what happens to the outcome?
So there are two things. As I said, the phishing simulation. The supplier is telling you, we do an awareness training, our people are aware of basic security practices or good security practices, and everything is in line. The moment you run a phishing simulation, let's say on 5 people who are providing services to your organization, and one of them clicks the phishing email, you know where the awareness level is, right? So if they're saying we have tighter controls, we encrypt our data, but it's being sold in the dark web. So you know where the supplier stands, right? There is no one way of saying that you're secure from a cyber point of view. Of course, it's an ongoing process, right? Questionnaires, you can only look at reports or evidences from time to time. You need them more from a legal standpoint, that you collected it from your supplier, and tomorrow something happens, you have something to counter. But if you really want, you need all these services to be stacked together, the background checks and stuff like that, to make sure that your risk is minimized. Of course, you can't cut out the risk 100%, but you will need to do ranking. Like I was talking to a senior guy in one of the big fours in US. And in fact, in our case also, because our ranking was 94 out of 100. So the reassessment or the yearly reassessment was not conducted by one of the largest companies in the world. They said, no, your rank is perfect. We will skip it for this year, right? So it depends on the organization. They look at suppliers in a very, very different way.
So it's about, but then it's exactly what we're talking about here. It's risk management. So they're actually making, they're looking at the risk, the priority ones, the P ones, the key people, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so that makes huge sense.
Anyone see any vendor get canceled out because they didn't meet the process, but they're an important vendor? Or do we always see mostly it's like, can you fix these problems?
Yeah, it's the second one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's about risk mitigation management. Is trying to keep. I don't think people are necessarily using this to exclude somebody, but we do have an interesting scenario where one customer here was looking at vendors in a specific area to get engaged to take on a particular service, and they went through this process, and they exposed some stuff that they said because of this process. They said, that we're actually going to exclude somebody from this process. So it's quite interesting. It actually has commercial implications. It knocked this other company out of the process because they just weren't well. These guys were saying, listen, we're not prepared to rely on them as for a key business process with the environment and and the infrastructure that they had in place, and said, listen, just take it off the list. So yeah, I think there are hits other than just to improve, but once somebody gets embedded, I think it'll probably typically be improved.
So I have been talking to a prospect where your onboarding happens, but your assessment starts in parallel. If you don't submit the evidences and everything and you don't answer, they stop all your payments. So there are ways and means people are pressing hard on this, but then it depends again, organization to organization, right? And I've also seen where vendors are being pushed through with an okay because they need that vendor for some critical service and they don't have a choice, right? But I think it's mainly when you talk about risk management, it's about the board level guys or the CXOs. Tomorrow with these platforms and these services, the visibility will come and they can go back and ask their own IT and security guys that if you saw a risk, why did you onboard a vendor? Or the other way is the IT guy or the security guy will go and say, please sign up the risk. There's a risk with the service provider. Who's going to sign it off, right?
Yeah.
So that's visibility will come in with platforms and services. And to answer one of your queries or one of the points you were talking about, Resham, was that a lot of our prospects are now coming back and saying, give us stack or give me one particular platform, but give me people who will run this for me, who will do the assessment for me. I don't have bandwidth to run assessments.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I think that even comes back to the whole Excel conversation. People don't have bandwidth and capability to actually have a lot of people doing work that doesn't need to be done. They need to automate that work. I mean, resourcing post-COVID and everything else is a real challenge in a lot of organizations anyway. People. So, but we're seeing that even as a general level, and it's interesting because I know there's a comment about MSSPs, et cetera. The whole area of delivering services and being able to scale them, outsource them, get them done, get the experts in, it means you don't have to rely on having to hire a whole bunch of people. And we're definitely seeing that right throughout the whole economies of Europe, for sure.
Yeah, and that was one of the key points that how are people trying to do it? They're going to do it themselves, or they're getting help from MSSPs. Of course, till now it has been a big four play, right? Risk was always, quote unquote, was a big four play. Now there are a lot of other companies, boutique companies like us, who have got into this area as a niche area, and trying to deliver packages with services, platforms, all inclusive. So what's the situation with Southeast Asia, Resham, in terms of MSSP versus I'll do it myself, or MSP or service provider based, whatever it is?
I think there is a lack of expertise actually in companies that can provide the services, right? Rohit, I've spoken to you about some of our customers and whether we can provide them, we can provide a platform. That's the easy part, right? But providing the services, doing the verification. I mean, we're lucky we live in a world now where the platform does a lot of the cyber verifications, but in terms of the actual question and evidences and seeing whether it's true or not, I think that's labor intensive. And in a country like Singapore, it's really expensive. But then with the world, ever since COVID's happened, the world's been open to everything being remote. Yeah. But again, how much is a vendor gonna expose or gonna reveal to another person or to another organization?
But I think the other question is, I'll stop you here, because the other thing is, by bringing in somebody, maybe you are not doing it, you're bringing your risk from 100 to 90 or 80 or 70, right? You're still reducing your risk to a certain extent. And the idea of the whole process is to reduce the risk, ultimately.
Yeah, one customer actually told me something to look at it very differently. He says he looks at it as like an employee verification process, right? Yeah. Employee wants to join a company, and then, in the big companies, what they do is they they have a third-party company go and verify the employment, why the person left the job, how were they in the job, and stuff like that. So he says, this customer told me third-party risk, if we outsource it, it becomes like that. There's nothing, we're not involved. We just name the vendor, somebody uses whatever platform, and they go evaluate the vendor and come back to us with an automated report and a verified report. And they tell us, if the vendor fixes this, you can appoint them as a vendor. If the vendor doesn't fix this, you need to look for alternative vendors or sign off the list.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is and it is interesting in the various conversations. I think we're going to see a different marketplace maturing in a different way. I think if we were to have this conversation in 12 months time, 24 months time, 36 months time, I think it'll be quite different. I think we'll start seeing TPRM moving down the stack in terms of it's being required by lots more people. It's been driven by many more people. I think we'll see an awful lot more automation in terms of pulling it together. I get the part about verification, but frankly, verification, people still have the challenges about doing verification any other way of doing it. At least you're consistently holding the information and maybe comparing the information with something else and looking at change over time. It's like all these things. If somebody fills in a questionnaire, next year they fill in another one, they need to be sure and consistent in their information or misinformation. So I think it'll drive up things like that. But I think this market will mature over the next 24 months for sure.
Do you think there'll be a global unified scoring mechanism or index? Because
global anything, we can't even sort the weather or a currency. How the heck are we going to sort out that?
How do you see, Resham? I think Michael took it up that, there's one stack which is small, medium, and large enterprise, right? And the other stack is time. How do you see this market maturing over a period of time? Because, for us in India, small means maybe 500 or 1,000 user company or employee company, right? Which is very different in Singapore and very different in Ireland, right? So how do you see your markets in terms of these stacks, and, how will they adopt TPRM going forward?
I think regulation drives it. But again, if we look at how the PDPC in Singapore drove the PDPA, which is the Personal Data Protection Act, and how they are enforcing it and fining people and stuff like that, unless the regulatory authority starts doing that, I don't think it will mature. It will mature fast enough, because you're just covering financial institutions now. There are penalties for breaches of data, but breaches of data is just covering one part of personal data is covering one part of the risk. Everyone has moved to the cloud. Whether you say small, medium, large, right? Everyone has moved to the cloud in the last 12, 16 months. Next 24 months, I still think the cost is prohibitive. I think good solutions, the cost is prohibitive. And if you add services on top of that, it becomes more challenging. So I think for it to be mass market, then, I still think the automation has to be further simplified. I personally feel there should be something called, a data passport, something like, or a security passport, third-party risk passport, where you do it once for your own company, you get a trust mark or some approval rating or ranking, and then you get to use it for 6 months or a year. And then irrespective of who it is, right? So if you want to do business with someone, you've got that reputation, you've got that trust mark, and then it becomes easier. And then the third-party risk solutions get used in a way to get that trust mark certification, rather than every single customer you work with, different vendors, different platforms, same answers, similar questions.
Maybe the cyber insurers will drive that.
Oh yeah.
And that becomes a global driver, because
I think
another way to make money, Michael. How much money do we need to spend?
Everything is about cost, right? It's about cost, end of the day. Risk versus cost of mitigating the risk. But Thank you, guys. It has been an interesting session. I think looking forward to the next one soon with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Resham.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rohit.
Thanks. Bye.
Take care.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.